Thank you so much for joining us today. We welcome Tamar Sher from Clayton, Missouri. She graduated from Clayton in May of 2017 and then from Indiana University, Bloomington in May of 2021. She has a BA in media with a specialization in sports and concentration, both public relations and broadcast journalism. She currently is the sports director at 14 News, Wi-Fi TV, which is the number
WFIE.
one, WFIE, okay, which is the number one station in Evansville, Indiana. This summer, she was able to cover the Olympics as they were an NBC affiliate in the midst of covering all the local tri-state sports. Please welcome Tamar today. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you. I'm so honored to be here and be asked to speak, and I cannot wait to see all of your faces. Let's see. I'm going to share my screen for you here, and then we'll get started. All right. So my journey becoming a sports director. So really just, I know we have like a diverse range of people and different industries that everyone are in. And so this is just kind of a talk that my journey as, becoming a sports director, how I decided to become a sports director, but also the power of people and how sports really connect one another and why I really chose sports, because the media industry is large. And so it was definitely a process for me to be able to figure out what I wanted to do. And as I was telling Stephen and Judy before, I found my passion and the love of my life, which is my work now. So where it began, like you said, I graduated from Clayton High School in 2017, and I was the yearbook editor-in-chief, and I was also an athlete. So I played lacrosse, played basketball, and then I was also kind of moving up through the ranks in the yearbook. Starting my freshman year, I got the writing under my belt. So I started as a writer, moved to an editor, and then was eventually the editor-in-chief. And what was cool about that experience was it really kind of opened my eyes to journalism and my love for it, my love for writing. And so that's something that I really, and I didn't, to be quite honest, going through high school and even applying to colleges, I didn't know what exactly I wanted to do, but I knew my two passions were sports. I grew up as an athlete, always playing in some team sport. But then I also am vertically challenged, as I like to say. So I didn't think I'd have a career in basketball playing, but that was always one of the loves of my life, is I love to be part of that team and also watching and being able to grow through those community sports. And then in terms of the Jewish community, I was involved in a number of different things. Some of those include, I was on the steering committee for Student to Student when I was a senior in high school. And I created the Giving Circle, which was a philanthropic opportunity where teens could pull together $180 each. And we decided where we wanted to give that money to and where we wanted to put our philanthropic energy towards. And that was through the Federation, which was a wonderful experience. And then I was also a camp counselor. So kind of growing up, I always kind of strive to get those leadership positions to be able to better myself and better my community by trying to be as helpful and as kind of giving as possible. And that really was helpful in just all the different aspects of school and life. And then it really ultimately led to my passions of wanting to be part of communities. And I think that's where journalism comes in, is it's much more than trying to find that deadline and kind of just getting it over with. Like journalism, you have to really want to know other people's stories and connect with people. And so when I was that yearbook editor-in-chief, I was able to, create my own theme. My theme what I wanted to create the book on, it was defined. And so through that, I did a bunch of different theme elements to kind of define who is the Clayton High School student body, who are we, who are the individuals that make that up, and what are their stories. And so from that point on, I was very much interested in, getting to know those individuals, those people. Everyone has a different story and what makes them who they are. And then that really propelled me into my career. So again, I still had no idea what I wanted to do when I graduated, but I did know I wanted to be a Hoosier. So if you can see on the bottom right of my screen, that is my poster that I made for senior year. And it was with the help of my family. Of course, I am not that artistically talented, but I knew from the day I was born that I wanted to be a Hoosier. That was no doubt. I loved IU basketball, and IU football wasn't as big for us, but IU basketball was my main sport. And I knew that I wanted to figure out how I could make IU my home, because my parents both went there, but then I was trying to figure out how I could make it my own. And so starting out, I first got a tour of the media school. I connected with the sports director at KMOX, Tom Ackerman, and he was the one that helped me for my love for the media school at IU. It's brand new building. It was a brand new program when I was looking at it as like a sophomore, junior in high school. And so that was kind of the school I was like, okay, well, I love to write and I love to be a part of a community and I want to get involved right away. Let's see if this is for me. So I started with what's called IU Student Television. I went into the media school and I decided that I wanted to put all my focus and energy on sports reporting, sports broadcasting, and that's where IU Student Television came in. I was able to work with the IU women's basketball team, with the IU men's soccer team, and different programs to be their beat reporter and be that person to hone my skills in not only writing, because I knew how to do that, but also to get better at that and then work on my camera work and work on my on-camera presence and different things that I knew nothing about. So I completely threw myself into a situation where I didn't know anything about the career necessarily that I was jumping into, but you learn from, and with sports, you kind of learn on the fly, you learn by experience. And I think that can be taken to a multitude of life lessons of just going and learning off of experience, because that's definitely what I did. I think what's cool is I never touched a camera in my life. I never spoke to the different sports. I never wrote the highlights before until I got to college, and I honed in on those skills. I learned that through putting myself out there and joining clubs like IUS TV. Then I was a sideline reporter, as you can see in one of those photos, for Big Ten Network Student U. So I was able to be that reporter for softball, soccer, women's basketball. And through that, I was able to connect with even more people. And that was also, of course, like I mentioned, something that I was always passionate about, is just the art of connecting with people and wanting to learn other stories. So my favorite event was, if any of you are Hoosiers, there's something called Hoosier Hysteria, and it is the introduction to the men's and women's basketball programs. That is something that my senior year, or is actually my junior year, I was able to use that as a platform, and I was the sideline reporter for that. And so met many people, was able to work on my interviewing skills through that, and it was one of my favorite accomplishments so far. Then later, I joined the Hoosier Network. That was my sophomore year. And I used the Hoosier Network as a platform because with COVID, I think it affected everyone's lives in different ways. And for mine, I was trying to figure out how to work on my craft while being restricted to being home. And so one of the main things that everyone was suggesting and saying to do was to start up podcasting. And what's really cool about that is podcasting, you don't need to be in a studio. You can be virtual. When Zoom was created and really built up, that was a really amazing platform for us to be able to use. So the summer before my senior year, when COVID hit, I was doing podcasts. One of them was called Let's Get Real. And it was a podcast devoted to women in sport. And so I would bring different women in the sports industry, whether that be athletes, coaches, broadcasters, any female who is in the sports industry. I would bring them in and I'd have a dialogue and conversation of, first of all, what is it like to be a woman in sports? Because there is a difference there, and there is, unfortunately, but there are things that women in sports go through that men don't necessarily have to. But there's also, how do we destigmatize it? How do we equalize everyone? And so that's kind of the conversations that we had. But then also I wanted to learn from them about their different industries and how they got into it and really what made them tick. And I think, and that was my favorite part of it, because I was able to meet and also learn about people while helping my own craft as well. And so eventually from there, I was able to get an internship at Wish TV, which is a station in Indianapolis. And so, like I was talking to Stephen and Judy before this, what the sports broadcasting, or just broadcasting in general, as it appears to be very glamorous, it not always is. And there was definitely a toll taken on me when I had to decide if this is something I'm really passionate about. I have to put 100% of myself into it. And so when I was going through school, I knew that I needed that internship. You want that one real life experience to see, is this for me? Is this not? And so that's where Wish TV came in. I was traveling from Bloomington to Indianapolis, which is an hour away, 3 days a week for my second semester senior year. And I worked the 2 to 10 p.m. shift. And that is what I chose to do for my senior year, because not only did I find my passion for sports and sports reporting, but I wanted to see, is this something I can do? Is this is a small sacrifice that I make to just get away from college for a bit to be able to see if this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And it is. And so that was an experience that I had my senior year that I loved and really cherished. It made me kind of propel me into the role that I have today, which I'll talk about in a second. And then the other piece that I also had in college was that I didn't mention before, but I was a camp counselor, and I started at Gucci, Goldman Union Camp Institute. And from the time I was 10 on, I was a camper, and then I was a counselor. And that was my favorite part of the year, is being able to go to camp with all my best friends. And I kind of started my ability to teach and connect through the Jewish community there, which I thought was beautiful and wonderful. And that kind of also stemmed into me figuring out what I wanted to do with my life. And camp helped me further than just being able to get those friendships, have those opportunities to be a counselor and be a mentor to kids, is that I then, my junior year summer of college, was a camp counselor at what's called Winnidoo. It is in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. And after the Blues won the Stanley Cup, literally the day after they defeated Boston, I was in Boston and was traveling there to spend a summer at what's called Winnidoo. And it's an all-boys sports camp. And I went there because I was able to have the opportunity to meet with and connect with Tracy Wolfson, who is the #1 CBS sideline reporter for the NFL and also March Madness and NCAA basketball. And that was a cool experience because she is, first of all, not only one of the kindest human beings in the world, but she was very honest with me and taught me, you know, what it takes to be in the industry, how to put yourself out there, and the importance of connections and being kind. And I think that can be with any industry as well. It's how do you put yourself in a situation where you can connect with people and really learn from them. And I think that was a big piece. Is I connected with Tracy and I was able to learn from her, with her, and we kind of grew, and I felt like I kind of grew with her in that sense, that I learned from her, not only by watching her on the sidelines, but just how she saw the industry, how she saw life, and how she really was as a person. And so then it leads me to how I found Evansville. So I am now at WFIE TV, which is the #1 station in the tri-state area, is what we call it, because we do cover Kentucky, Indiana, and Illinois. But how did I find this? I was a couple months out from graduating IU, and I was in a broadcasting class and with one of my mentors. Her name's Ann Ryder, and she was a former sports anchor, or former news anchor and reporter in Indianapolis. And she developed a career broadcasting Zoom session with news directors from around the country through Gray Television. And Gray Television, if you know anything about it, owns different stations around the entire country. So I met with different news directors through that Zoom, but to start it, it was like this. It started as a Q&A session where students, so there were multiple students on the call, could ask any question they wanted. And so what happened was I got onto the Zoom call, and when they asked, you know, do you have any questions to start us off? I raised my hand first. I started speaking and I asked the question, you know, as I'm from St. Louis and I would love to be in St. Louis one day, but I know that is not the first step. If you want to be a sports reporter, you can't start necessarily local television in St. Louis. It's very difficult. So for you, I asked the news directors, how do you deal with new reporters who are relocating? What's the process of that? How do you help them on that process, especially if they're just graduating college like me? And so a news director from Evansville unmutes himself and says, well, do you want to go halfway home and just stop here on your way home to St. Louis and work for us? As a joke. And I was laughing and I was, oh yeah, sure, of course. And then it ended up turning into an opportunity. Because I spoke up first and he enjoyed my voice, enjoyed my presence, he called me. And I was immediately after that, it was kind of an opportunity I couldn't refuse. It was close to home, but it was also a sports director position, which is very unique and different to start in. Usually you can start as that weekend sports anchor and work your way up. But for me, I'm working Monday through Friday as the sports director in the #1 station here in Evansville. So I wanted to first, kind of before I dive into my career, wanted to show you a couple of the stories that I've done while being at WFIE to just showcase some of that work. The first one I'll start with, I was able to connect with a man. His name is Dwayne Casey, and he was inducted into the Kentucky Sports Hall of Fame. He was a basketball player and coach for University of Kentucky, Kentucky Wesleyan, among other schools. And now he is the head coach of the Detroit Pistons. So I just wanted to show you this story as an example of some of the work that I do.
Kentucky basketball legend and Union County graduate Dwayne Casey is now a member of the Kentucky Sports Hall of Fame. Both he and his hometown community reflected on the honor. Dwayne Casey, Pistons head coach, 2018 NBA Coach of the Year, member of the University of Kentucky's 1978 National Championship team, and Union County High School alum.
It's very, very rewarding to me to see a young man advance, really enjoy playing as he did, and a very good player
began his career as an assistant coach at Kentucky, then went to Western Kentucky University, where he met current Owensboro Catholic basketball head coach Tim Riley.
And I thought at that time, I was like, this guy is really, really special. He just had that personality, had that, just it. It's hard to explain when somebody has it, but, I always feel like that Dwayne had, that it, the discipline it takes to be, to do what he's done in coaching.
Last week, Dwayne was inducted into the Kentucky Sports Hall of Fame. Even after being recognized at the highest level, he said there's something special about being acknowledged by those who helped write his story.
Being recognized from your home people, to have the people you grew up with around you was unbelievable. And here I'm a little basketball coach, and from Morganfield, so it was heartwarming.
Ernie Simpson, Dwayne's former high school basketball coach, was among the hometown crew who attended Dwayne's induction. Ernie said his former student is deserving of the award not only because of his talent, but also his heart.
I'm 75, so I coached the old school way, and Dwayne has took all of that learning and been able to take all of that and take it to a new way of teaching it. He's a great teacher of the fundamentals of just the game of basketball and the game of life.
Even after I've gotten into the NBA, and it's my 28th year in the NBA, I've always had Kentucky and felt like it was home.
Casey was one of the 6 inductees into the 2021 Kentucky Sports Hall of Fame.
Awesome. So that was,
Kentucky basketball.
I'm a little technically
A
challenged
legend
here,
and
which I shouldn't be. Okay, there we go.
Kentucky
So,
graduate Dwayne Casey is now a member.
That, just
okay, there we go. But so that is an example of one of the stories that I did that I found just through being part of the community and knowing someone who knew Dwayne. And I reached out to him and said, hey, would you mind taking some time out after practice for the Pistons to chat with me and talk about your story? And he did. And that was just kind of an example of one connection that I was able to make. And now from here, I have built a beautiful friendship with Dwayne. And it was cool because I was able to tell his story of growing up. And so if that, for example, that was meaningful to those that knew him in Kentucky. And then what is so powerful about journalism, which is my favorite part of it, is those kind of stories help to really make people feel good. And they also kind of, you can learn about these people and their stories, what makes them tick beyond just their sport. And then I will show you another one. And this is more of, I'll just show you a glimmer of it so that you can see one of the previews. So I also go, and which I'll explain, but I'll go into the community. Not only do I do stories about individuals, but I also cover all the high schools around the tri-state. So those 4 states, and we're in Southwest Indiana is where Evansville is. So I go to different high schools around the area and report on their, especially high school football, because that is what's huge in this area. So I'm going to just show you a preview of one thing that I did to kind of preview a matchup of the Central football team here in Evansville.
At our game of the week.
Tonight at Central Stadium, the Bears are getting set to host the Castle Knights for our Week 8 live stream game of the week. But before that, let's take a look at the Castle crew. Now 5-2 overall after taking a hit in Jasper, the Knights enter Week 8 with a fighting spirit.
It's never easy coming off of a loss, but I think, it pushed some anger into us, and we're just getting after it in practice, just doing what we can. There's no game plan that's just going to win us the game. We have to execute.
That grit may be just what the Knights need to take down their longtime Central rivals.
They play real man football over at Central. They line up in 2 back and the tight end. I'm an old school offensive lineman, and they play real football. They're not one-dimensional, but they play the game the right way. It's kind of a breath of fresh air to watch people get in the eye and run the ball. So on the offensive side of the ball, I think we've got to get back to establishing the run and not beating ourselves.
The now 2-5 Bears have taken.
So that is just an example of what I do. And every single week is a different matchup, a different school. We're now into the postseason. So there's a lot more to work with there in terms of storylines. But let's see if I can. I think I'm going to need to redo this. Sorry about this. Okay. Okay, technical difficulties. Here we go. So now I will be talking about my life in the tri-state. So if you've never heard of kind of what it takes to be a sports director or a sports reporter in general, about to tell you. So those stories that I showed you, not only did I present myself on camera, whether that be live or in the studio, I also take and film all of that. So I not only report it, so find the story, but I write my own script, I shoot my own video, edit that video, produce it for the show, putting it together, anchor, and what I said, repeat. So that's kind of the role of what I do. I work Monday through Friday, 2 to 11 p.m., maybe more some of the days. For example, a high school football day is going to require more. But even then, my life is work, but it's also getting comfortable with the uncomfortable, because even though I immersed myself in this new community, I'm not from Evansville, but I spend a lot of my off time just getting to know the community, meeting people, getting to understand what this community loves. So they have a fall festival that everyone goes to. It's this week in first week in October, where they raise money for different communities. And I was able to be part of that and seeing, okay, so even though I'm not from Evansville, let me learn the stories of these people, this community that really makes them whole. And so I feel like that was a big part of my job too, is just getting within the community, which is something that I'm very passionate about, and also getting to cover their local sports. What was cool, we are an NBC station here in WFIE. So I was able to cover the 2020 Tokyo Olympics. So Lily King, she's an Olympic swimmer. She's from Evansville. So we got to do so much coverage. We hosted watch parties for the community for her. And I was able to interview her mom and different people, her coaches and mentors in her life. Also, as you can see, I didn't include this picture, but I was going to, Jackie Young, she won the women's 4-on-4 basketball tournament in the Olympics as well. I was able to go there and meet her and be able to report on that. So that was a cool experience right out of the gate. I got there in May, and then the Summer Olympics are happening right after. So kind of was just thrown at me, which was a challenge, but also so much fun. Then, of course, I do my high school sports, anything from high school football, Friday Night Lights. We have a Touchdown Live show that is 15 minutes long, that it's a show just of all of the highlights that we can possibly take video of and write for our after show on the sports app that we have. But again, I've been talking about my passion and love for sports and journalism in general and how that connects, but why did I actually choose sports? Just kind of wrapping things up, I am very much a believer that connections and the power of experience are what has driven me along through my journey. If I didn't stick with yearbook in high school from my freshman to senior year, I would have never been the editor-in-chief. But because I stayed with it and I experienced those different components of how to be a writer and an editor, and then led me up to being that ultimate leader, that's how I was able to get the drive of finding my passion. So it started in Clayton High School and then grew from Clayton to IU and now to Evansville and beyond. So it was truly because I feel like I value connections. I value the art of meeting and being close to people and just putting yourself out there and getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. And then I know there's a diverse group of people in here, but this can apply to any part of life, of just raising your hand, getting involved, trying new things, and then, of course, what I said, experience the world beyond your comfort level, is something that I've really lived by, because I feel like if I didn't put myself out there and get to, try new things, I would have never found my passion. Another thing, be kind to everyone. My industry is very small. Even though it looks glamorous, it looks like there's a lot of people in the media industry, there's really not. Everyone's connected in different ways. And so I think the best advice and the best way to live by is to be kind to everyone, to care and genuinely be a friend to everyone, because you don't know what everyone's going through, but you also don't know who they work for, where they work. So it's just, you gotta just be part of that community. And then, of course, it is an absolute honor bringing communities together with the power of sports, because sports, and why I chose it, is what brings people together in some senses. It's the rivalry aspect, but also people from all over the world can just get into and invested in one team or one sport. And I just think that's so beautiful. So that's my life, and that's my journey to becoming a sports director. So I would love if anyone had any questions or any comments, this would be the time for them. But I do appreciate you all for having me today and being with me and hanging out.
So if anyone has any questions, you can raise your hand. Bill, do you want to unmute?
As a Clayton grad, I'm glad to be speaking to you. As a Boilermaker, I'm not so sure I should be.
I'm so sorry.
Have you found any difference in reporting on men's versus women's sports?
Definitely from the standpoint of fandom. I think that is what's a little different on that end. For me personally, I get as much excitement to do both. I started as a women's basketball beat reporter, but then again, it was more challenging to get those positions for the men's basketball team. So I think that's the main difference, is some of those opportunities are more difficult, unfortunately, trying to cover those men's sports, or for example, like a men's basketball or football. But in terms of coverage, in terms of stories that I can get, they both are rich in those. And so I've been able to find, like, for example, our girls soccer team in the tri-state, they just won state for class 2A in Indiana. So, and that's a story in and of itself. So story-wise, there's a lot on both ends, but coverage, it's very interesting. There definitely is a bit of a difference in terms of the availability for both. That's a great question.
Or do we have some more? If you want to type in the chat, you could type a question or raise your hand or unmute yourself. So I have a question. So while you're there in Indiana, are you following some of the things that are going on in St. Louis as well on a personal side? Cardinals, Blues, soccer,
yeah.
stadium.
Oh, yeah. So it's really, and I really am glad that I'm here in Evansville. I'm going to say it right now. It's a blessing in disguise that I'm here in Evansville, because there are so many St. Louis sports fans. So when days are a little bit slower, I am able to run some Cardinals highlights. And so I'll talk about the win streak that they went on to clinch the for the wild card game, and they were unable to get that. But I was able to build up to that moment with my Cardinals fans around here. So of course I am totally staying in tune with everything St. Louis sports, because it's cool. I do get to report on it some. I do have to talk about Cubs and Red too, but yeah, no, it's fun because I do get to cover some Cardinals and Blues now that they're playing.
Yeah, they're hot too.
Yes, they
I think right now they are anyway.
Yes.
Let's keep up. Yeah. And then the soccer stadium too, it's coming, I don't know when they're opening, but it's interesting that, we're working towards
Oh yeah.
professional soccer.
Absolutely. And also, there were a lot of going to IU. That's a huge soccer school. If anyone didn't know that. And there's a lot of talent that is brought from the St. Louis area. So I think it's really awesome because there is a huge soccer community in the city of St. Louis that people might not even know about.
Yeah.
And I know it coming from IU, but it's going to be great for the city, I think. And then
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
just the soccer fans.
Do we have more questions today? Yes, Neil, do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself? Okay.
I think I have. I'd like to not ask Tamar a question so much, but I'd like to ask Myron Holtzman a question, who's on the call. He's been a reporter for a long time. What have you seen with Ms. Sher's career, women developing in this field from when you started to what it is now? You're muted.
There we go. I'm glad you asked because I was almost going to ask Tamar, are you're still planning on coming back to St. Louis or whatever? That may be one of your goals, may not be. My first job, I went to the University of Missouri. My first job out of the University of Missouri was in Rochester, Minnesota. A little bit colder than Evansville, but but the thing is, you work for a smaller newspaper like I did in Rochester, but you're doing everything and you're learning all the different nuances of, well, I was a sports writer, and you learn all the nuances of the newspaper business, not only the reporting, but the editing, layout, all that stuff, which is new. And I'm sure that's some of the experiences that you've actually come through.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's exactly what I was taught in school. Is I was going to have to start somewhere and grind. And that's the main lesson of just wanting to be not only a sports reporter, but any reporter, because you do have to start by learning the writing skills, learning camera work, learning how to produce a show. It's all of the aspects into one, so that you can be more knowledgeable if you do move on and move up and say you want to be that main anchor one day for a station. You can't get there without understanding and knowing the basics, the ground level, and knowing how to be talented in all those different facets. So that's exactly how I've grown.
And one of the things that I had going for me is the Rochester Post-Bulletin, which is the first paper I worked for, was the third largest newspaper in Minnesota. And it's 90 miles from the St. Paul, Minneapolis area. And we got to go up there and I got to cover, Minnesota Vikings and some of the Minnesota baseball team when it's there. And before the domes, actually, but that was great experience. And then when I got a call one day from the St. Louis Globe Democrat to come work there, it was a great experience. And obviously going there and covering high school sports and then graduating colleges and pros and whatever and doing it all. I still pride myself in knowing all the nicknames, and you're a Greyhound, but
yep.
but and then being promoted to the sports editor finally with the Globe, and that helped. It all helps, and it's a transition that you keep going through all these different transitions and finally reaching the pinnacle, if you want, of your profession. So it was great for me.
Yes, and I think what's interesting too is you talk about like working your way up and making sure you hone into all those different skills. And what's interesting about my role is that they hired me to be the sports director off the bat in a city that I'm not from. So getting to here right after graduating college and then really being forced to put myself in a new community and truly understanding and knowing and building those connections with these coaches who've been here forever to say like, hey, I'm a new face, but I want to tell your story as best as I possibly can. And I can't do that without just kind of the help of the entire team to just be able to find those stories and get into the community and have them trust you so that you can do good work for them. I think that's an interesting point too. And I do have one other sports reporter at my station as well. But yeah, you definitely have to be your own advocate.
When
So
you applied, they must have seen something in you that led them to believe that you could do that job. And from what we've seen and from what we're listening to, you certainly do meet that position. So congratulations.
thank you. I appreciate that so much. Yeah, if anyone
Do we
has
have-
any
we have any more questions? Yeah. Not seeing any more right now. Stephen, did you have anything else you wanted to add or say? You need to unmute yourself.
Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for this really interesting, entertaining, and really very uplifting program. And thank you for all the wonderful things that you're doing, and continue to do good things.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yes,
And thank you for
Tamar,
having
you
me.
yeah, it's just been great to have you. And, just some of your story is very inspirational. So
Thank you.
keep going.
Thank
Yay,
you. I
team.
appreciate it. Only the start. So I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. Thank you everyone for joining us today. And maybe when, things get hopping, we'll have you back sometime.
That would be great. And
All
hope
right.
maybe one day in person.
Yeah, yeah,
you.
that would be good too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great.
We'll see you in St. Louis.
Yes, see you in St. Louis. Hopefully. But thank you all. I appreciate it.
Okay,
Thanks
thank
again.
you. Bye, everyone.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.